Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe. So last night I went and checked out the new Spider-Man Far From Home movie and I had a lot of fun with it, so I wanted to jump on camera and talk about it just for a little bit. I don't really do too many of these movie discussion videos. Last time I did one was for Endgame and it was like 40 minutes long, so that's not going to be the case here. It's just going to be short and sweet, and it's not going to be a scene-by-scene analysis of the movie. It's just going to be me rambling about how much I like the movie. And obviously don't watch this unless you've seen the movie, because it's going to be a bunch of spoilers. I'm just going to be talking about everything in the movie. So if you haven't seen it, please click off this video and go check it out, because it's a really fun movie. So let's get into it, and I'm going to start off with the complaints. My one big complaint about this movie is that it felt very lopsided, because I feel like the beginning was it was kind of weak, you know, and it wasn't really bad, but it just wasn't what I wanted from a Spider-Man movie. It felt very like it felt like a teen romance, a very well done teen romance with a lot of good comedy and stuff like that, but it just wasn't what I was looking for in a Spider-Man movie. And I do understand that that's a big part of Peter Parker's character, that, you know, he's in school, or, you know, he works, or whatever it is, whatever interpretation we're looking at, but, you know, he does his life thing, and the superhero thing gets in the way of that. So I know that that's a big part of it, but in this movie it was just kind of there. The beginning was just very like fast, and it just felt like they were trying to hit a bunch of stuff before we got to the action, and it just wasn't that compelling. But then halfway through the movie it kicked into gear, and the movie, it became incredible, to be honest with you, because I loved what they did in the second half. So at the beginning, he's trying to plan his trip along with his friends. He's talking a lot with his buddy about how much he likes MJ. The one thing about the MJ relationship, I think Peter Parker and MJ have really good chemistry in this movie, but I feel like it was a weird jump, because in Homecoming, he was all, you know, head over heels with this girl Liz. Liz moves, and then at the end, you know, MJ's like, oh, call me MJ. But, you know, there was no like attraction before that, or there was barely even interaction. She was just kind of following him around, making awkward comments and stuff like that. It did feel like she liked him, but it didn't really feel like Peter was into her. But then all of a sudden in Far From Home, he's like obsessed with her almost, you know. But so I thought it was kind of a weird jump, but, you know, in the end I'm okay with it, because I think that their relationship works really good. I think they're really fun to watch together. It's really cool how awkward she is. She's always making awkward, dark jokes, so that's really fun. And Peter Parker's like, you know, like light and funny and goofy and stuff like that, and they just kind of they bounce off each other really well, so that's really good stuff. So anyways, he has this whole plan about how he's gonna get with her while they're overseas. It's all fun stuff, and a cool thing about this movie is that it takes place after Endgame, so they do address like some of the snap, and they do it in kind of a funny way. Like there's a part where it shows a bunch of people, you know, in band, and half of them disappear, and then when they reappear, they just kind of like get thrown in there. They're like falling all over the place. Obviously, when they show scenes like that, it causes a bunch of questions. It's like, oh, what happened to people in airplanes? You know, stuff like that. But anyways, it was kind of interesting how they made it like funny. And another thing that they addressed is at the end of Endgame, we see Spider-Man show up with all his classmates, and all of them are the same age, and a lot of people were like, oh, none of them got snapped, or how are they all the same age, or whatever. And it turns out they just happened to, you know, they got snapped. So that it is what it is. His group of people got snapped and other people didn't. So it kind of shows that, because there's kids at their school that grew 5 years. It's kind of cool at the beginning. It shows the school like news people doing their awkward like report on it. It's super funny. And the kid there who's talking, doing his thing, saying, oh, it's weird, now my younger brother is my older brother, and just all kinds of weird stuff. So the snap definitely had ramifications throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we're probably going to see forever. But yeah, it's funny that Far From Home made it like a big joke. It was kind of an interesting take on it. But anyways, all that stuff, like I said, that stuff was the weaker part of the movie. Once we get to when Peter meets Mysterio, it really kicks into gear, and it's a lot of fun from there. I really like Peter and Mysterio hanging out, talking to each other, and it looks like they had a good relationship. I was kind of hoping that they would remain friends somehow, not after, you know, Mysterio got into his stuff, but right then I was like, man, they're a cool, you know, duo. It would be really cool to see them be friends and things like that, even though in my mind I knew that it was all gonna come crashing down. And it's funny, when you're watching this movie, a lot of things seem off. You know, Quentin Beck seems off when he's talking. His suit seems really like extravagant and over the top, and when you're watching it, you know, it's superhero movies, so we're already into it, but at the same time you're watching it, it's like, man, that's a kind of a crazy suit. He's got a cape, like he took the time to make that, and, you know, whatever. But once you see how like why he has such an extravagant, crazy cape. It makes a lot of sense and it's really cool. Even Nick Fury seems a little off. There's a big reason for it, why, and I actually love that. Actually, let's talk about that. One of the end credit scenes shows that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Skrulls for the whole movie, and they were Talos and his wife. And I think that was really cool, because when I was watching the movie, Nick Fury was making a bunch of decisions that just didn't make sense to me. I was like thinking, Nick Fury wouldn't do this. Like, he's smarter than this, you know? So, but then again, I was like, all right, well, it's a Spider-Man movie, so maybe they're dumbing down everybody. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm so happy that wasn't the case. That little end scene made the rest of the movie a lot better for me, because it kind of validates a lot of the stuff that Nick Fury was doing, because I just didn't understand why he was so, like, you know, set on dragging Peter Parker into this. Nick Fury is a smart guy. He's not going to drag this kid who's like doesn't want to do it into this situation, because it would cause a mess, just like it did. And Talos even like admitted it. He was supposed to do one simple thing, and then he turned it into a big old fiasco. So I mean, that's crazy. That was really cool that they did that with the Skrulls. But anyways, let's get back into Spider-Man and Mysterio. So they do this big old fight with Molten Man, and it was really cool. Actually, let me back up a little bit. When Mysterio first shows up, he brings like Hydro Man, or I'm gonna call it Hydro Man, even though it's like they're calling it the Elementals or whatever. That is gonna be the closest we ever get to Hydro Man, and it was really cool. It made me wish that there was a movie with Hydro Man as the main villain. It's really cool. So I mean, it kind of sucks because we'll never see like an official Hydro Man in any of these Spider-Man movies. But if that's as close as we get, that's okay, because it was really good stuff. And you know, after that, Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and Mysterio, Spider-Man, and the whole crew there have a big old plan to fight Molten Man. And before that, Spider-Man says he doesn't want anything to do with it. He's going on vacation. Nick Fury basically makes all these arrangements to put Spider-Man where he wants him, and you know, Spider-Man's all mad about that. But then, you know, he just kind of goes with it reluctantly. He didn't want to be part of it, but he's there. He wants to make sure his friends are safe, so he goes out and does his thing. Him and Mysterio fight Molten Man, and it's a big crazy fight, and it's awesome stuff, and it just looks cool. I love the way that they show Mysterio's power with the smoke and the green and the purple. Green and purple are classic comic book colors, so every time I see that, I'm into it, you know. So that was really good stuff. A lot of a really cool display of powers, even though it was very, you know, he kept doing the same things, and you know, you see why later. But after that, Quentin Beck convinces Spider-Man to give him the Edythe technology, which obviously Tony Stark, you know, handed down to Spider-Man through Nick Fury. And Spider-Man had it. A bunch of funny stuff happens with it. He almost kills this dude, whatever, ha ha ha. But Quentin Beck does all this stuff to convince Peter Parker to give him that stuff. And then he gets it, and then Quentin Beck and his crew, I love how they like justified Mysterio's whole thing, because for me, in the comics, or at least in the really old comics, anytime I read anything about Mysterio, it was like he was a special effects guy, and he uses all these special effects to trick Spider-Man. And it's like, you know, he's gonna use all these movie special effects to trick a superhero. I like Mysterio, and I think he's awesome, but I never fully bought into it, you know. I think the movie does a much better job of showing off his powers and making it seem realistic. I love his motivation. I love his whole team's motivation, and it would make more sense to me that it would take a whole team to create Mysterio's illusion and not just one man. But so I love the way that they did that. It's like the whole crew was Mysterio, and Quentin Beck was like the leader. So that was really good stuff. And once Mysterio has the technology, he wants to do other things and make these big old like you know, disasters that he's gonna go stop, which is very like reminiscent of the comic book. So that's awesome stuff. And then Spider-Man and MJ are hanging out. She discovers that he's Spider-Man. They're talking, they're doing their thing, and then they find the little projector, and then Spider-Man kind of finds out what happens, and then, you know, he has to do whatever he can to get the Edythe technology back, and he realizes he made a big mistake. So once Spider-Man kind of figures out what happens, he confronts Quentin Beck at a warehouse or like a construction site or something, and he thinks he's meeting Nick Fury there and Maria Hill and all this stuff, but it turns out Quentin Beck was just tricking him, and the whole thing was like an illusion, and it was just crazy. That whole sequence was amazing. It felt like right out of the comic book. There was so much cool stuff going on. I loved when the moon became Mysterio's head. I saw it coming, you know. Once you see the moon, you're like, oh, that's gonna turn into Mysterio, and it does. He grabs like MJ, throws her, Spider-Man jumps to try to save her. It's an illusion. All of it's an illusion, but he's jumping down. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on. He ends up like in a graveyard, and then we see like an Iron Man zombie come out of the ground, and it made me feel like they could do a Marvel Zombies movie. I just love the way it looks. It felt like a little Marvel Zombie Easter egg, and there was just so much cool stuff going on. And then at the end of this whole sequence, we see Quentin Beck, Nick Fury shoots him, and you're kind of relieved. You're watching it, and Nick Fury comes up in Nick Fury fashion, kind of just like, tell me like who you told. I know you told people because we got to save them, whatever. And Spider-Man, just like a naive little kid, is like, oh yeah, you know, I told my friends or whatever. And then it turns into Mysterio again. It's like, man, such a like perfect plan. You know, Mysterio felt like such a threat to Spider-Man. He just was able to trick him so good. It was so amazing. And I love like Beck kind of just backing him down into the illusions, and Spider-Man just kind of backing up, and Quentin's kind of talking to him or whatever, and then Spider-Man just gets hit by a train, and I was like, holy crap. That whole thing was just incredible. Just really, really good stuff. My jaw was on the floor the whole time watching it. I couldn't believe what I was watching on screen, and I cannot wait to see that whole sequence again. It was just amazing stuff. But after that, we see Spider-Man hanging out in this jail thing, and it kind of leads to some funny stuff. He gets out of there. He calls Happy Hogan. Happy Hogan shows up, picks him up. And I like that Spider-Man really didn't believe that it was Happy Hogan at first. He like wasn't sure what to trust. And then, you know, it goes from like this kind of dramatic moment to a funny moment very seamlessly. You know, he's like, oh, I don't know. Is it really you? He looks like he's going to cry. And then he tells him like, tell me something only you would know. And Happy Hogan pretty much, you know, kind of busts him out about watching some porn or something like that. It was a very funny little joke, and it went from something very serious to something very funny. So I thought that was very cool. And then after that, you know, Happy Hogan and Spider-Man are on the plane, and they're talking. Spider-Man's crying about how much he misses Iron Man. They both miss Iron Man, and Happy Hogan basically convinces Spider-Man to step up, and he kind of shares with them some more stuff that Tony left for him. So Spider-Man gets to it. I love seeing Spider-Man like work on his costume, and it was really cool watching Happy watch him, because it was kind of like Happy was you know, he saw Tony and Peter, so that was really cool. But I love the Spider-Man suit with the black and the red. That looks awesome. It comes off really good on screen. And then finally we get to Mysterio trying to execute his big plan, where he's gonna, you know, make it look like there's this big threat. He's gonna come save the day, and he's gonna be the best hero ever. And then he could finally make changes, because people only listen to you if you have lasers in your hands and you have a cape on. So that's his whole idea, that he needs to make this big impression, and then people will finally listen to him and his crew, and they can make a better world. So aside from him wanting to kill everybody, or kill a bunch of people, it did feel like, you know, he had something to say. But anyways, they do this whole thing. Spider-Man gets his plan. They hook up with Nick Fury. Nick Fury knows that that Mysterio's a bad guy, this and that. And then my second favorite sequence in the movie is when Spider-Man was fighting all those drones. A lot of times we see Spider-Man fighting big villains and monsters in New York. This time around, he's in a different location. He's fighting all these drones, and it was very different, you know. So I like that a lot. I like the way that he was dodging all the drones and shooting his webs and doing all kinds of stuff. He was all over the place. It was really good. It went on for a while, but I never got bored of it. I really liked seeing him fight all those drones. And I really liked how they were protecting Mysterio, and Spider-Man knew where he was, but he just couldn't get to him. He kept getting messed up. And I loved how, like, when he got down and he had to like invent a few things to help him get back up there because he ran out of webs. I loved how he grabbed something to use as a shield, and then like a little machine that kind of acted like Thor's hammer, you know. It was like worthy Captain America. But yeah, that was a really good scene. And at that time, Mysterio's trying to prevent Spider-Man from getting to him, and at the same time he's trying to kill the couple of kids that know about the whole Mysterio thing. So he's got a lot of things going on. And finally Spider-Man gets into the little bridge where Mysterio's at, and that was another good scene where we had some more illusions and all kinds of good stuff. But Spider-Man closes his eyes and uses his Peter Tingle to get through and fight Mysterio, and it's just another incredible sequence. And that was another pretty funny running joke. Aunt May keeps calling his spider sense Peter Tinkle, or Peter Tingle, and you know, Happy calls it that, and Spider-Man gets all mad. A bunch of funny stuff. But anyways, he uses his spider sense to fight Mysterio with his eyes closed, and it was just amazing. I loved him again fighting all those drones and trying to like figure out what was an illusion and what wasn't. Finally, after Spider-Man fights through all the illusions, he gets to Mysterio. Mysterio had been shot by one of his own drones, so he's on the floor, and Spider-Man's talking to him, and he's like, you know, Mysterio's giving off some kind of like, you know, almost like a heroic thing, like a speech to Spider-Man, like, oh, people need whatever, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then you just hear a gunshot, and Spider-Man kind of catch something. And at first, I thought maybe like Nick Fury tried to snipe Mysterio and Spider-Man stopped it or something like that, because that's very in character with him too. He's always trying to prevent his villains from dying, just like he did in Homecoming, and he's done it a million times over the years. But in fact, it was Mysterio standing behind Spider-Man, and he was going to shoot him right in his head, man. Mysterio was a savage, and that was just so cool how Spider-Man stopped it. So really good stuff. stuff right there. And from there, you know, the movie just kind of ends. It like goes off to Spider-Man heading back to New York. He's hanging around, swinging, doing his thing. He's, you know, interrogating Aunt May and Happy Hogan about their relationship. And Happy Hogan's all like, yeah, I love her, whatever. And Aunt May is just like, oh yeah, whatever, a summer fling or whatever. So that was all funny stuff. But yeah, the movie just kind of ends. And like I said, it was really good stuff. And for the first half of the movie, I was like, oh, okay. But the second half is probably the best stuff that I've ever seen in a Spider-Man movie, especially the Mysterio sequence in the warehouse. I can't think of another scene in a Spider-Man movie that I like more than that. That stuff was just incredible. And then we get to the end credit scenes, and those were a lot of fun too. And going into the movie, all I heard about the end credit scenes is that someone shows up that we would never expect, and I just couldn't, like, I couldn't even come up with a good like prediction of who I thought. I was like, you know, could it be like Doc Ock? But it was like, no, we've seen Doc Ock. That wouldn't be too far-fetched. Or, you know, could it be like, would it be Venom again? I don't know. We just saw Venom in a movie. That wouldn't be too far-fetched either. And then I thought maybe like Tombstone. For some reason, Tombstone was sticking out in my head. And again, I was like, well, I mean, who cares about that? No one would even care. But yeah, I couldn't, like, for some reason, I don't know. I just couldn't do it. But then once they showed it, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I would have never guessed that. And it was J. Jonah Jameson played by J.K. Simmons. And that was just really, really cool because I feel like he's like the only one who could play that character. It was really cool seeing him there. He looks a little different. He doesn't have the flat top, and I think his facial hair was a little different, but he is J. Jonah Jameson. So it's just J. Jonah Jameson with the haircut. Good stuff. And he's a little different. He's not like a newspaper reporter or anything like that, or he doesn't run a newspaper spot. He's like a, you know, a news anchor, I guess, or like a conspiracy theorist kind of guy, whatever. He's on a screen and he tells everyone that Spider-Man is Peter Parker and that Mysterio was the greatest hero that ever lived. Not only does he tell everybody that Peter is Spider-Man, he also has this video from Mysterio where Mysterio is basically making it seem like Spider-Man is the villain. And I think that was really cool, especially because when in that scene in the bridge, when Spider-Man finally puts on the glasses and stops all the drones, she says like execute cancellation order or something like that. And he's like, yeah, execute, whatever. And I was thinking, what like a poor choice of words, because the guns are pointed at people, they're following his friends, and he's saying the word execute. Thought it was kind of strange, but then they made it make sense. So really good stuff. And the second scene, I already discussed it. It was with the Skrulls, and Nick Fury and Maria Hill were Skrulls, and Talos calls Nick Fury and is like, I can't do this. I don't know the answer to all these questions, whatever. You have to get back. So I think that was kind of a cool place for Nick Fury to end up, and hopefully he comes back soon. I'm pretty sure that Nick Fury's been a Skrull for a while. I want to say that it was probably around Winter Soldier when he almost died. I think that's probably when they made the switch, and Nick Fury's just kind of been laying low for a little bit. I think that would make sense because he's been doing his thing for so long and he trusts Talos, you know. So okay, so I think that's it. In the end, I think that it was a really good movie. There was some lows and some really, really highs, but the lows weren't that low. So in general, I think that it was a super good Spider-Man movie. I don't know if it was my favorite. I'm kind of in between this and Homecoming, to be honest. Well, Into the Spider-Verse is by far the best Spider-Man movie, but as far as live action goes, I don't know. I don't know. I think Homecoming was like a more even movie, you know, but the highs didn't get as high as Far From Home. Far From Home, the Mysterio stuff, the second half is the best Spider-Man stuff that we've ever seen on screen, including the Tobey Maguire stuff and the stuff in the middle. I forget. Oh, Andrew Garfield, all that stuff. You know, I know a lot of people don't like all those movies, but there's definitely some good stuff in all of them, but not as good as this second half of this Spider-Man movie. So I can't wait to see it again, that's for sure. And you know, I might say that it's my favorite Spider-Man movie, my favorite live action Spider-Man movie, but I'd have to wait. I don't want to say that right now because, you know, I'm obviously hyped up from the movie. So I have to wait to watch it a couple times. I've watched Homecoming a bunch of times, and I like it a lot every single time I watch it. So we'll see if that could be the same case with Far From Home. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video of me rambling about Spider-Man Far From Home. And as you might have noticed, I have this cool Unparalleled Universe t-shirt, and this shirt is done by Sculptimo Designs. I shout out Sculptimo a lot because they're an awesome place to buy action figures from, but not only do they sell action figures, they also do t-shirts. So they do a lot of cool action figure related t-shirts, and they hooked me up with this. And you can buy one of these directly through me. I'll leave an email in the description below. Just send me an email if you're interested in buying one. And I was doing the Teespring thing for a little bit, and I mean, I like that setup a lot. It's very easy, but the shirts were not the quality that I was hoping. These shirts are much nicer, and I'm very happy with these ones. So, you know, if you want to support the channel a little bit and you want a shirt with a cool, you know, Sasquatch face on it, hit me up. Anyways, that's it. Thank you very much. Peace.